They didn't just steal my work. They stole my name, my future, and then they fired me like trash. I still remember the room. The hum of the air conditioner too cold against my skin. The long glass table polished within an inch of its life. The way the city glared through the windows, like even it knew something was wrong. Greg sat at the head of the table. Mark leaned back in his chair, smiling that half smile of his. And me, sitting there, heart pounding, realizing in real time that the thing I had built, the months I had poured into code and sleepless nights, the vision that was mine, was being stolen in front of me. I was excited for my raise. The words slipped out too quickly, almost childlike, and I tried not to grin too wide when I said them. 6 months of late nights had led me here, 6 months of silent grinding, carrying a company that didn't even notice when I skipped meals or forgot weekends. The boardroom smelled faintly of burnt coffee, the kind that sits too long on a warmer. The glass table reflected the overhead lights in cold little shards, papers stacked neatly, though no one ever read them. Greg, my boss, didn't even look up from his cup when I spoke. He chuckled. Not warm, not kind, just flat. "What raise?" he asked, almost bored. My throat caught. "The raise we discussed." Greg tilted his head toward HR. She didn't meet my eyes, just slid a folder across the glass table with fingers too practiced at detachment. The header was clear in bold ink. Salary increase approval, Mark Evans. I blinked at it. Then again, I read the name once more, slower this time, as if maybe my eyes had betrayed me. Mark. The air around me grew sharp, like a glitch in the system. "You were never on the list," HR said. Her tone was clipped, official, like reading a disclaimer no one cared about. Mark leaned back in his chair. That same smug half-smile, like a boy who knew he'd get away with breaking things because someone else would clean up. "Oops," he said, feigning innocence. "Meant to tell you." The silence that followed wasn't guilty. It was worse. It was indifferent. A silence that didn't even register my humiliation as something real. Just another moment, disposable, forgettable. I swallowed hard. My palms were damp, my heart beat sharp against my ribs. But I stood. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. "I see," I said, voice steady, and I walked out. No one followed. No one stopped me. At my desk, I unplugged my USB, picked up my chipped mug, lifted the little plant I had nursed through every deadline and long night. My life condensed into 3 small objects. I carried them out like evidence. What they didn't know, what they never cared to imagine, was that I already had evidence. I had been keeping receipts, every credit stolen, every email quietly rewritten under his name, every Slack message where Mark asked me to word this so I sound smarter. I had backups of the codebase, screenshots of the project logs, notes, recordings, memos. I wasn't walking out defeated. I was walking out armed. My name is Jenna Lee, and if you stay with me, you'll see what revenge looks like when it's patient, quiet, and devastating. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No apologies. Not even a "sorry it didn't work out." I suppose they thought I'd vanish like the others. Women who worked in the shadows, built empires brick by brick, then disappeared when the credit went elsewhere. Forgotten. But I didn't vanish. I was building, while Mark was posting his celebration selfies, holding champagne flutes, captioning with words like teamwork. I was alone in my apartment, lights dim, laptop glowing. The air smelled like cold takeout and too many burnt candles. The floor was scattered with sticky notes, strings of plans that connected one betrayal to another. My living room became a war room. On the walls, taped screenshots of commits and pull requests. Emails printed and pinned, Slack conversations highlighted. I had every sprint I authored, every strategy meeting where Mark drifted half asleep, every line of code he'd claimed as his own. And one more thing. An NDA, I never signed it. They hadn't thought I was important enough for one. That was their first mistake. The second, Underestimating my memory, I started drafting. The cursor blinked on a blank Medium page. Title: How I Built a $1 Million Platform While a Mediocre Man Took My Credit and my raise. But I didn't publish. Not yet. First, I gave them a warning. I sent Greg an email. Subject line: Attribution request. Final chance to make this right. Short. Professional. Terrifying, if you knew what I had, Greg replied 3 hours later. The tone was suddenly different, nervous. Let's hop on a call, I declined. No more calls, no more talking, just action. The next morning, Mark emailed me. Hey Jenna, just wanted to say sorry again. It was never personal. You're great at what you do. I stared at the screen. My fingers didn't move. Then slowly, I attached a single file, the entire codebase. The one he had claimed as his own. I didn't send it to him. I BCC'd the CTO of the company that had just acquired our startup in a $12 million deal. That's when the panic began. I didn't even have to look for it. I watched it unfold in real time on LinkedIn. First, Mark's promotion post vanished. Then Greg's smug brag about investing in internal talent disappeared. Then the whispers. Then the audit. And I hadn't even dropped the real bomb yet. Tuesday subject line leaked. Urgent. Internal IP review. Attribution discrepancy. Evans. By Wednesday, Mark was off the company Slack. By Friday, his LinkedIn headline quietly changed to Open to Work. Former product lead, except he had never been a lead. He was a thief. And now the industry knew. I didn't have to say a word. The CTO's team did the digging. They traced every commit, every timestamp. They saw my fingerprints on every build, every launch. Turns out, oops, I forgot to tell you, doesn't cover intellectual theft. Not during an acquisition. Meanwhile, Greg scrambled. He sent me an email. We'd love to bring you back in a consulting role. Short term, of course. Happy to discuss compensation, I laughed. Alone in my apartment, the sound broke sharp against the walls. He wanted the fire after trying to snuff it out. So I replied, Greg, I wouldn't return to that building if it were on fire. And you asked me to blow on the flames. Then I hit publish. My Medium post dropped at 10:17 a.m. It took 7 minutes to go viral. By noon, it was trending on Twitter. She did the work. He got the raise. She got the last word. Headlines bloomed. Startup queen quietly topples tech bro empire. Women in tech retelling their own stories. Non-binary devs recounting years of erased labor. I wasn't just Jenna anymore. I was a symbol. And Mark? He was a case study in what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. 2 weeks later, I got the message. Alana Ruiz, CTO at Heon Tech. Subject, let's talk. I read it 3 times, the way you read a text from someone who might change your life. She didn't ask for a resume. Didn't request a call through PR. Just, I read your story. I've got a proposal. We met in Midtown, in a quiet cafe with tables too close together and the smell of roasted beans heavy in the air. She came alone. No lawyer, no assistant. Just her, a worn leather notebook, and a pen that clicked softly while she spoke. Respect is in the details. Respect shows up with no entourage. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a 6-month build contract. Full authority as technical lead. Salary blank for me to fill. Equity on top. I don't want you to come back to tech, she said. I want you to lead where tech's going next. I asked her why. Why me? She leaned in, eyes steady. Because you don't just build systems. You expose the ones that are broken. I signed that night. No hesitation. No doubt meanwhile, Mark vanished. No posts, no tweets, just silence. Rumors trickled in. Failed freelance projects. Clients pulling out once they Googled his name. His digital trail littered with apologies and deletions. Greg clung to his VP title like it was a lifeboat. Smiling in conferences, shaking hands that never gripped back. He became a walking warning label, The story HR whispered in training slides. Don't let this happen to you. And me? I was building again, this time with people who burned with the same fire. Half of them found me through my article. Women, overlooked grads, people whose work had been invisible. They sent me messages full of fury and hope. I hired them, not because they needed a chance, but because they deserved to never ask for one again. We built fast. Our first beta launched in 8 weeks. Funding came before the pitch deck was finished. Investors didn't want the product. They wanted the culture. No stolen credit. No whisper campaigns. No invisible labor. And on launch day, someone from my old company tagged me in a congratulatory LinkedIn post. The kind of fake support that drips with opportunism, I replied publicly. You don't get to celebrate what you tried to silence. 14,000 likes. 2 hours. I wasn't just the girl who left. I was the woman who rewrote the playbook. Then came Michelle, HR. The same woman who once slid that folder across the glass table and told me, "You were never on the list." She called from a blocked number. Left a voicemail. "Hi, Jenna. I know things didn't end smoothly, but we'd like to talk. There's been a shift in leadership. Maybe there's a way to rebuild." Rebuild, as if I had knocked it down. I didn't call back. I saved the voicemail in a folder labeled "They Remember," and I kept moving. Later that month, I stood under stage lights. Keynote speaker, Women in Tech Conference. 5,000 faces, eyes lifted toward me. I spoke about more than Mark, more than Greg, more than betrayal. I spoke about silence, about how it feels to watch your work wear someone else's name, about the laughter that follows when you ask for the raise you've earned, about the erasure that becomes muscle memory. The room didn't clap at first. They just sat with it, the heaviness of recognition, then the thunder, a standing ovation that didn't feel like praise. It felt like release. Afterward, a girl no older than 20 approached me. Tears in her eyes, fists clenched. "I thought I was crazy," she whispered. "I thought I was alone." I held her hand. "You're not. You never were. You were just quiet." And they built their thrones on that silence. Her face lit up like a match in the dark. And I knew in that moment the war was bigger than me. The emails started again. First from Greg, polished, punctuated, pretending control. "Jenna, we'd like to extend an invitation. Consulting capacity. Competitive rates. Of course, we'd value your insights during this transitional phase." Transitional. That was the word. Like he hadn't been gutted in the middle of a board meeting. Like his empire hadn't collapsed under the weight of the truth. I almost deleted it. But instead, I replied with one line, "You fired me before you promoted me." He didn't respond, but someone else did. Alana forwarded me an acquisition notice. My old company, the place where Greg and Mark had sat smug in that boardroom, had just been swallowed by He and Tech. "Thought you'd like to see this?" she wrote. No emoji, just the clean knife of fact. For weeks, I waited for the fallout. It came on a Tuesday morning, with rain streaking my apartment windows and the city muffled in gray. Greg requested a meeting. In person, against my better judgment, I agreed. The conference room was the same as before. Glass walls, sterile air, too much chrome. But the energy had shifted. Greg sat across from me, smaller somehow. His tie loose, his hands restless. He didn't even pretend confidence. "Jenna," he started, "we underestimated you." I didn't reply. I let the silence stretch until it hurt. He cleared his throat. "High-end wants you. They've made that clear. But if you'd consider helping me through this transition, I'd make sure—" "Stop." The word came sharp, steel-edged. He froze. "You don't get to make sure of anything anymore. Not my career, not my paycheck, not my legacy. You had your chance to do the right thing. You chose theft. You chose silence. And now you want me to carry you across the fire?" He flinched. I leaned forward. "I'm not your consultant, Greg. I'm the reckoning you earned." The room was quiet, but not empty. Somewhere behind the glass, I could feel the presence of others, observing, evaluating. I stood, smoothed my jacket, and walked out without shaking his hand. Later that night, Michelle, the HR woman, emailed me again. Her words were softer this time, almost pleading. "We've all made mistakes, Jenna. We'd like to find a way to acknowledge yours as well as ours." I stared at the screen, the audacity of it burning. My mistake? Surviving? Believing I deserved a raise? Carrying the company on my back while they erased my name? I closed the laptop. Not every fire deserves oxygen. By the end of the quarter, Greg was gone. Quietly retired, the press release said. No ceremony, no applause. Just a man slipping off stage before the spotlight burned him further. Mark resurfaced too, briefly. A startup pitch deck leaked online. Investors laughed. Screenshots went viral again. He disappeared within days. And me? I walked into Heian's boardroom as technical director. Not a seat they gave me. A seat I earned. The glass table looked the same. But this time I wasn't waiting for permission. I was rewriting the script. The climax wasn't in the revenge itself. It was in the mirror, standing there before my new team. Women, men, voices too long silenced now speaking freely. I realized the real win wasn't that Greg had fallen or that Mark had vanished. The win was that they could no longer erase us. We were visible. We were undeniable. We were permanent, and I was done being quiet. Months passed. The storm slowed, but it didn't die. Every conference I spoke at, someone pulled me aside. A woman clutching her badge, a man who'd seen his own work erased, a young intern who thought she'd imagined the injustice. They all said the same thing. I thought I was the only one. The power wasn't in my medium post. It wasn't in Mark's downfall or Greg's retreat. The power was in the chorus. My story cracked something open. The voices rushed in like floodwater. Companies scrambling to cover, leaders pretending reform. HR decks rewritten overnight. It was messy. It was imperfect. But it was visible. And visibility changes everything. One evening after a long day, I found myself walking past my old office. Same building, same glass lobby, same security guard glancing up half-interested. Through the tinted windows, I saw the glow of the boardroom lights. It hit me then. I used to dream of being in that room. I thought it was the summit, the place where decisions carved futures. But standing there on the sidewalk, I realized the truth. That room was never built for me. It was built to contain me, and I had outgrown it. The next week, Heian's board invited me to present. My product, our product, had passed every milestone. Our users were growing daily, investors circling. I walked into their boardroom with no nerves this time. No shaky hands, no forced smile. I carried my team's work like armor, like proof. When I finished, the room was silent for a beat. Then applause. Not the polite kind, the real kind, the kind you feel in your bones. A chairwoman leaned forward. "Jenna, we're ready to expand your role. How soon can you start?" I smiled. "I already have." That night in my apartment, I lit a candle. The same one I had burned through those endless war room nights. The wax had melted uneven, the wick nearly gone. I watched the flame dance, fragile but insistent. Revenge wasn't the fire. Revenge was just the match. The flame was something else, something larger. It was every woman who refused to disappear, every coder who refused to hand over their name, every quiet voice that rose into thunder. I whispered into the room, to no one and to everyone. They'll never forget us again. The flame flickered once. Then it held steady, fade out.